Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming at you for another one of my famed movie/Blu-ray reviews. Today I'll be reviewing the movie and Blu-ray of The Elephant Man. Dun 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 dun. Dun 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 dun. I could do more of the theme, but why waste your time? First I'll talk about the movie, then I'll discuss this Criterion, they call these Digipack Blu-ray release that came out, I think, in the later half of 2020. My history with The Elephant Man, or the movie The Elephant Man, goes back, I think, to the early 90s when I think I just blind buyed this tape. This tape has a copyright year of 1991. So I'm pretty sure I just blind bought this tape. This was the VHS at the time in the early 90s for The Elephant Man. It's not rewound. That's bad. It should be rewound. And look at this kind of font they use there. Kind of, I mean, I guess I can understand they're colorizing the cover or the image or whatever, and of course, as I've documented in videos, before and stuff, late 80s, early 90s, they just basically had one image on the back. Pretty cool image. It's kind of, for someone who hasn't seen it, it would kind of make you wonder, what's under that Jason, Part 2 Jason hood thing. So I don't know what led me to buy this or want to see it or whatever, but I can remember being impressed with the movie and liking the movie. I don't think it was something that I necessarily watched very often. It's not really a movie that begs to be watched very often, being more on the depressing side. It's kind of like, I guess if you live an overly happy and wonderful life, maybe you could watch this more often to bring you back down to reality or whatever. But it's never been a movie that really is that great on rewatch value. And unfortunately, I forgot that before I bought the Blu-ray, and I realized that once, after I got the Blu-ray and watched it. But we'll talk about that a little later. It should also be mentioned that, being a fan of classical music and film scores and stuff, well, hell, I mean, I was that way in the late 80s and stuff with some of the first film music I can really remember liking is like Beetlejuice, and stuff like that. So some of the first soundtracks and on tape back in the late 80s I got were like Beetlejuice, and of course the Danny Elfman score for Batman and all this kind of stuff. So being a fan of classical music and film scores at a young age, probably not long after I got the movie in the early to mid 90s. When's this copyrighted? Oh, 1994. Milan Entertainment. So obviously maybe I got the tape around 93, 94, but sometime later, of course, I would end up getting the soundtrack score CD, which is really great and has some really great themes. And that's one thing I can say about the movie that's really great is the score is, I mean, the movie is really great all around. It's just the depressing, really great movie. Actually pretty cool packaging for the CD. Since the movie's black and white, they kept the artwork black and white, which is really cool. So the movie The Elephant Man, if you don't know, is about a supposed true case of this guy by the name of John Merrick, who was just born deformed and all this and that, and wound up, I guess his mom was supposed to have been like trampled or attacked by a wild elephant while she was pregnant, and as a result this deformed guy is born, and he's the Elephant Man. And unfortunately, I don't think do we find out what happened to his mom? I don't know if he's supposed to be dead or just, I guess we don't know. From what I can remember of the movie, we just don't know what happened to mom or dad. I mean, unfortunately, when the movie starts, we find this character is obviously what's that called, a carnival attraction, I can't remember what it's called, but the freak show carnival attraction, the Elephant Man at a carnival or whatever. That's how the movie starts. It should be said that this came out in 1980, stars Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt as John Merrick. But it's really cool by David Lynch, of course, and what's really cool about this movie and really amazing for its time, you know, there'd be more movies in the 90s and stuff that would come out in black and white, but I think for 1980 it was definitely probably more daring of a choice. This movie, of course, was shot in black and white, shot and released in black and white, which was a really, I can imagine in 1980 must have been a really, you know, risky choice. And you know, the Blu-ray comes out or came out with a stereo, and what's the tape say? The tape says stereo. So from what I can see from day one in 1980, this movie was stereo. So it's not like it was a low budget movie. So it must have been quite a risk to, you know, put this out in black and white and spend the extra money to have it be stereo and stuff like that. So you know, Paramount was really serious about this movie and hopeful about this movie's performance. To be, you know, just it should be said that I don't know anything about its performance or how well it did or anything like that. I'm not a big Elephant Man enthusiast or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen this movie probably since the mid to late 90s, so I forgot pretty much most about it. But Anthony Hopkins plays the surgeon who, I guess there's some kind of ruckus. This takes place in, I think, was it London, England or something like that, or London, England, I think. And there's some kind of ruckus in the city or whatever, police, this and that, and he follows the ruckus to this, you know, this freak show attraction, the Elephant Man and whatever, and there's some kind of quarrel about something or other. Someone has some issue with something or whatever, or something or other. And Anthony Hopkins' character is curious about what's going on in this Elephant Man character, and he ends up going, you know, this obviously the Elephant Man is taken care of, quote unquote, by this sleazy, you know, sideshow attraction guy who's basically just uses him as a, you know, a breadwinning, what's that called? Uses him to bring in money, we'll just say. Uses him as a meal ticket, I think is the term or whatever. But uses the Elephant Man, well, we can say John Merrick, we can, you know, uses him as a bread ticket or whatever, or means of his income or to make his living or whatever. So John Merrick is just like, you know, just a means of income for this jerkwad. So Anthony Hopkins ends up paying this guy, since he's a surgeon, he probably lives relatively well or whatever, ends up paying this guy for a private showing of John Merrick to see, you know, he's just curious about his condition and being a surgeon and the medical man and all this and that. He wants to see. I don't think they really explain his curiosity. It's just, you know, being a surgeon or whatever. He's curious or whatever. And I will say, in this moment, this was the only thing I remembered about this movie before I just recently saw it again for the first time since probably the mid to late 90s. Is that I always, that moment towards the beginning of the movie where Anthony Hopkins actually gets a look at John Merrick for the first time, and they kind of course, just like with RoboCop, the movie RoboCop, we tease John Merrick's appearance throughout the first half of this movie where he's first seen in shadows. As a matter of fact, seeing it again recently, I kind of think they showed him in even too much at the beginning in the shadows when Anthony Hopkins' character is seeing him. I think we saw him a little too much. You could make out, for my money, you could make him out a little too much right in that scene. You shouldn't have been able to see basically anything, in my opinion, at that moment, but that's just me. But the thing that I always remembered about this movie, going back to the 90s, is the moment where Anthony Hopkins' character sees him, and we don't see John Merrick at that time, we're zooming in, you know, or tracking into Anthony Hopkins' face, and you just see like his face is like, you know, and just in, you know, disbelief. And then when the camera really gets in close, you can see a genuine like tear come down, and it's just like, oh my God, that moment always left a lasting impression on me, and just like, wow, that was such a great way to express without showing John Merrick right away the condition of his, you know, I guess physical appearance or whatever. So without doing a beat by beat, what ends up happening is, I don't even know how, I don't even remember how it happens, but Anthony Hopkins' character ends up, you know, I think he makes a deal with, you know, the guy taking care of him, or the guy who makes money off him or whatever, and probably pays him, I would imagine, to let him take John Merrick into the hospital, and he sets him up in some room and stuff like that, and it's kind of, I don't know, I guess it's kind of, you know, you kind of feel like this guy might be nice to, you know, take an interest in John Merrick, but towards the beginning of the movie, after he's at the hospital and stuff, he, you know, one of the first things he does is like show him to rest of the hospital doctors and or surgeons or whatever, and as a kind of a medical, not a just a medical, I guess, observation of what can happen with birth and what can do whatever, and a very technical, just showcasing of John Merrick's quote unquote deformities, if you will, in a scene that's kind of dehumanizing. And at this point, it's kind of interesting early on, like as a viewer, you're kind of like, well, it's nice of this guy to take an interest, but that scene leaves you a little with a kind of a bitter taste in your mouth. So as a viewer, you're kind of like, well, I guess I found myself, in this love-hate, well, maybe not love, but dislike relationship with Anthony Hopkins' character as the movie began. It's just kind of like, well, what's this guy's interest and in him, and even the character himself says, because he now he takes John Merrick out of the, it's this movie's kind of a, it's a morality tale and a tale of, I think it says it in the beginning of the movie, like something about, a story about human dignity or whatever. So that's the interesting thing about this movie, is it's just like, so, Anthony Hopkins' character takes him from a sideshow attraction, and it's kind of like just to more of an upscale sideshow attraction, where now he's just parading him around in front of, surgeons and doctors, and instead of getting paid for it, they're just observing him, and then they're having other people of higher, whatever it's called. What do they call it back then? I don't know, the more well-to-do people or whatever, people in society, like this singer woman, performer woman who performs on the stage or whatever, stopping by and seeing him. So it's almost like this morality tale of, I think as the movie wears on, the viewer understands that Anthony Hopkins' character does care, more for John Merrick, obviously, than the, that sideshow attraction guy who was quote-unquote, taking care of him. So that's basically the movie. As the movie progresses and stuff, he's trying to convince the head of the hospital or whatever to keep him there, and he tries the John Merrick character is very obviously withdrawn and introverted and stuff. And then when the movie begins, and we don't even, they just assume, Anthony Hopkins' character just assumes he's an idiot and he can't speak or whatever. But then, at the beginning of the movie, he actually gets him to talk, and he's going to introduce him to the head of the hospital in hopes to make a good impression so he can stay there for a while. And he basically gives him lines to remember, and he remembers them and says them to the head of the hospital. But then the head of the hospital's like, you just told this guy lines to remember. That's no big real big deal or whatever. And then they're out in the hallway, and John Merrick starts reciting, I think, some Bible verse or something like that, and Anthony Hopkins is like, I didn't teach him that. So it's just like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, maybe this guy, instead of being just a worthless idiot lump of flesh, maybe there's more to this guy. And I guess as a result of that, the head of the hospital lets him stay there longer. It's kind of interesting, and I guess realistic, unfortunately, how if someone's horribly deformed or whatever, people are just going to assume he's an idiot. And that's another thing about this movie that's part of the morality tale and stuff. It's just like obviously the age-old saying, don't judge a book by its cover. What ends up happening throughout the course of the movie is John Merrick comes out of his shell more and more and more, and Anthony Hopkins sets him up with the place that he ends up staying, which I think is the hospital. They make his room really kind of nice, and they give him good clothes, and actually start treating him really nice. And as I said, Anthony Hopkins actually at one point has him to his house to meet his wife, and it's heartbreaking to see. Like there's at one point at his house talking to his wife, and his wife, of course, is all hot, and well, I don't think they said hot back then, but a beautiful woman. And this movie takes place at is it the end, like the end of the the 1800s, end of the 19th century, probably right around the turn of the the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. That's why the black and white suits it so well. In the scene, John Merrick's talking to his wife, and he just breaks down crying, and it's just like, I can't, I never dreamed of having a beautiful woman be so kind to me. And it is a very, and that's this movie is really difficult for me, because it's like it's a really 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 good movie and a well done movie. Unfortunately, it's because it's I guess it's a credit to the movie and David Lynch, but because it is so effective and so it touches your heart. I mean, it's painful to watch. It's not an easy movie to watch. It can be depressing, and even during the scenes that aren't depressing, like that one where, he's being touched at how nice people are treating him. I mean, it's a pain. For me, it's a kind of a difficult movie to watch. So that's why it's not really going to come off the shelf very often. I'm afraid to say, in my place or whatever, or I think I can just say it. I basically regret getting the Blu-ray, but the whole reason I got the Blu-ray is because it was a 50% off sale, so it was only $20, but still I was just like, and I suppose I haven't looked at any of the special features, so maybe some of the features will make it worth getting, but that's the gist of this story, basically. Anthony Hopkins' character actually improving this guy's life, and at some point, like halfway through the movie, he does ask himself the question, am I any better than the guy who parades him around or who formerly paraded him around at the, at the freak show attraction, because now I'm just parading him around in front of socialites and society people and this and that. So it is an interesting question and an interesting morality tale. I guess my answer to his question would be, well, you might be parading him around in front of people just like the other guy, but I think John Merrick's a lot more happy in his nice room and nice clothes than he was in the other situation. So even if he's correct, I mean, I think John Merrick is definitely more happy. And throughout the course of the movie, there's this really cool thing where we show that he has this limited view from his window. He can see like the top of some church spire or something like that. And throughout the course of the movie, he's building this little model. And it's kind of an interesting plot point where he's got to imagine, he can just see the tip of it, and he's got to imagine what the rest of it is. He's building this little, I don't know if it's like paper or cardboard. I mean, it's more, amazing in the movie than I think anyone could really, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. There's probably people who can make something like this or whatever, but it's a really, really, great little model out of paper or cardboard or whatever the hell it is of this church thing. So as the movie wears on, obviously it's being made aware that, this John Merrick character is a perfectly wonderful individual and possibly even more of a better person because of his physical appearance, and obviously I don't know, it's a great morality tale. It's a great tale about, like it says in the beginning of the movie, I think, something about, the basics of human dignity, or a study in that or whatever. Having rewatched the movie for the first time in a long, long time, one of my biggest complaints with the movie, and something that if I did a Nate cut of the movie, I'm not too sure I'd have it in there. I mean, I guess I can see why it's there, but towards the end of the movie, I don't know if it's like, 3/4 into the movie, right before, it's like it's in the second half of the movie where, everything's great and it's been a kind of happy movie for a while, and then this guy who works at the hospital, who's like in the boiler room, or some maintenance guy or whatever, has all these, kind of in the middle of the night breaks in and has all these, just people from the bar and stuff look at him, and he has them pay him to, to show him the Elephant Man in his room and dressed all nice and stuff. And so that scene, is kind of this traumatizing scene. You know how movies, especially comedies and kids movies, I've talked about it in reviews in the past, they always have to have this, like the last, somewhere in the last half, if a movie's 90 minutes, a lot of times it'll be, in the last third of the movie, the last half hour, last 15 minutes or so, where it's got to take this depressing dip, and then only to go happy again, like E.T., that's a perfect example, E.T. dying only to come back to life, like quite literally, like 45 seconds later or whatever. And I forgot all about that happened when I rewatched it, for the first time this year in a long time. I was like, God, I don't know if that's necessary. I would have just as soon, as a viewer, just have his life had it just improved and just had it be improved for the rest of the movie. One thing that I can understand why they did that. I think what I would have done instead is focus a little more on his hardships as a freak show act in the beginning of the movie before Anthony Hopkins discovers him. I would have just repositioned it from the end of the movie to the beginning, because I guess, again, to the movie's credit, I guess the reason why I do that is just because it was just so painful for me to see that happen to him, like in his state of happiness. I guess that's the whole point of why they had it happen in the movie, just to really, hurt the viewer, or hurt the character and or the viewer and stuff. But I personally probably would have shown more of his hardships as a freak show act in the beginning of the movie before Anthony Hopkins came along, instead of that, because I just felt like, and not only that, but then that asshole that made money off him in the beginning, kind of kidnapped him for a while, and then the other freaks at the circus had to, break him out of the cage, only to go back to his room in, London or wherever the hell he was. So, I mean, I just feel like it was just one of those E.T. is dead moments that just, is only there just to sink the viewer, down, only to, bring him back to the happy place. And I think after that happens, I think is when he goes to see that show. And there was a really touching moment, and I didn't remember that it happened this early on, where that woman, like this beautiful woman who's the performer or whatever, the stage woman or whatever that does stage performances and stuff, it takes, the news of John Merrick and all this and that, and the Elephant Man being in the hospital is all in the papers and stuff. So this woman gets wind of it and wants to meet him. And that touching moment where, they do this Romeo and Juliet kind of thing where she plays Juliet in his little room, just kind of acting it out. And he knows being a reader, he knows the story, and, they're kind of acting it out in that touching moment where I don't think she kisses him on the lips, but, which is, probably would have had her do that. I think it's just off to the side or whatever. But I remember thinking as a teenager that was really touching moment, and having seen it again, it is. I remember, I thought that was later on in the movie, like after or before the performance or whatever, but the last part of the movie is that really happy kind of, he went out to see the stage performance or whatever, this musical just stage performance, and the way it's presented in the movie, and it's one of my favorite music cues from the score as well. It's just this kind of montage of, just all these goofy images and stuff that are, some of them almost look like stock footage. I don't know, I can't imagine that any of it's stock footage, but just the nature of, the film stock and stuff, some of the stuff looks like stock footage, and maybe it is, I don't know. But the montage little scene where they kind of, they show a whole evening's stage performance in just like a minute or a minute and a half or whatever, with some music and stuff, I always thought was a nice little scene. And he's like sitting next to some bigwig I don't know, she's some princess or something like that up in the balcony or whatever, and after the performance everyone's like, and by the way, someone says, I think the woman who smooched him, and they did the Romeo and Juliet thing, was on stage saying, my very good friend John Merrick is here, and he's like, stand up, take a bow, and everyone stands up and gives him some applause and stuff like that. And that's towards the end of the movie. And I mean, this movie is just a tearjerker. That's why it's just like, I mean, I guess if you've got something in your eye or something like that, it's a good movie to watch. But oh my God, and even just sitting here talking about it, there's one, as I close out the review, there's one point that I didn't make early on, which is, he's got to sleep, because of his physical condition, he's got to sleep sitting up or he'll suffocate, I think is what they say. So he's got a whole plethora of pillows that he crams in the corner and just leans against to sleep. And this just murdered me as a kid, and to be honest, I'm kind of being murdered now just thinking about it. Holy shit. I don't think I've ever cried in a movie review. Okay, so I can admit it. Tears are welling up in my eyes this is, I think, a first. I don't think I've ever been on the brink of crying in a movie review, but this is a testament to the movie's, I guess, power or whatever, or ability to emotionally move me. The way this movie ends has absolutely murdered me ever since I saw it as a teenager, and did the same thing upon reviewing it again. And as you can see, even talking about it isn't easy for me, where after this amazing night out in a really, really high point, probably the best day/night of his life, in his room at the hospital, there's this painting of this girl sleeping in bed, covers all the way up to her neck, and she's sleeping, and it's like this drawing or painting. And he looked at that earlier on in the movie, and when he comes back from just this wonderful night out, and just being, just treated so amazingly. He looks at that picture again, and this is close-up of this picture, proceeds to, I'm going to do my best here, proceeds to take all the pile of pillows off off the bed, and proceeds to get in bed and go to sleep, well knowing what's going to happen, and the audience obviously also knows what's going to happen. And it's probably one of the most, I don't know, heartbreaking and touching, I don't know how to really describe it, endings in a movie that's just like, as you can see, it affects me. So the movie does a good job with what it was trying to convey, obviously. So so that, the end of the movie is basically that. He decides to go out on a high point. Oh, another thing I should mention is, I guess he, because of his physical condition, isn't said to have, he was dying anyway, or was not going to live much longer anyway. So he chose to, at that high point in that wonderful night, to have that be the night he wants to go out on. And that ending is just like, just amazingly touching. And they do this they do it in a way where obviously we don't see him die or choke to death or whatever. We kind of, see him lay down, and the camera goes over to his model and goes up to the church or whatever. And this is kind of goofy, psychedelic, stuff going into the stars and all this and that. So the way the movie's ending was handled, with him basically, I don't know, one of the most, I guess, cinema's most beautiful suicide scenes or whatever, is done relatively well in a way that doesn't, embellish on the actual death aspect and stuff like that. But and so that's how the movie ends, not to ruin it. But obviously the movie is very, 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 very well done. My star rating for the movie, I guess, just because of, well, I was gonna go lower, but I'll go 3.5 stars out of 4 stars. I was gonna go 3 because the rewatch value for me is so low, but I guess the reason it's so low is because the movie is just so well done. I mean, it's once again a testament to the movie. It does what it does so well that it's just too heartbreaking to watch, I guess the reason why it's not something that I'd watch very often. It definitely deserves 4 stars, but I'm just gonna go 3.5 just because of it's just so hard for me to watch. It's not really, my rating's really not very fair. I mean, I would say that it's a 4-star movie, but I'm just gonna give it 3.5 stars. I don't know. It's it's a really, really great movie, and really does what it does very well. Oh, I know the reason why I don't go full 4 stars is because I'm not keen on that moment where, towards the end of the movie, where he's all, his former life comes back and he's all paraded around as a side show attraction again. That's the thing that I don't give it 4 stars for. So I stand by my 3.5 stars. If it didn't have that scene, I'd probably go 4 stars for the Elephant Man. And now that I've kind of got the stuff out of my eyes, we can move on to the Blu-ray review. Unfortunately, my time is limited, so it's kind of a half-assed Blu-ray review in the sense that I haven't watched a single special feature on here. I can only comment. All I'm going to be doing is commenting on the image and sound quality. So I can say that obviously, and this, I didn't know this was like a Panavision wide movie, so one can only assume that the version I saw on here was a pan and scan version, unless if this was shot in that Super 35 where you're seeing more on the tops and bottom on this version. I don't know. Having been such a long time since I saw this version, I can't remember if I'm seeing more of the image or not. I would say, if I had to take a guess, this was probably a heavily cropped version, and this of course being the the 2:35:1 aspect ratio I saw for the very first time. I never had this on DVD, I just had the tape and then I went to this. That's another reason why I thought, well, I might as well just get this. It just came out. At the time I bought it, it just came out, so I'm like, might as well get it. I know that on Blu-ray.com, the transfer on this release is very, very heavily praised. I would say that, you know, the contrast, or the, you know, isn't, you know, leaves a little bit to be desired in my opinion. It's not perfect in my opinion, but I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm so used to, you know, my ideal film, you know, transfers, like, you know, nice heavily, you know, nice amount of grain and all this and that. This, I don't think there's really a whole hell of a lot of grain here. I remember, you know, it's kind of like my complaint with the Criterion release of Night of the Living Dead. Like, sometimes I feel like the contrast isn't good enough, or, you know, things like that, where it's just like, you know, I don't know. I wasn't blown the hell away with the thing. Like, you know, I think it's like a perfect, the video I think got a perfect rating on blue-ray.com. Like, I don't really necessarily agree with that, but what the hell do I know? The stereo was pretty good. One thing that I was kind of surprised about towards the beginning of the movie is some of the dialogue seems to be a little bit on the quiet side. One can only assume that's how they mixed it for some reason, but, you know, the stereo's good. I didn't watch it in 5.1, I just watched it in, you know, 2-channel stereo. Well, obviously you're not gonna, what I mean is I didn't watch it in, like, on a Dolby surround. I didn't watch it on a surround receiver, I just watched it on 2-channel stereo. And, you know, it's not like a freaking Michael Bay movie, so the stereo's not going to blow your ass off. It did a good job. And as I said, towards the beginning of the movie, it just seemed like it was a little, you know, some of the dialogue was a little quiet in comparison to some of the other, like, you know, sound effects of the this and that or whatever happening. So, as I said, this is kind of a lazy Blu-ray review because I didn't look at a single special feature on this particular release, but I can show you the director-approved Blu-ray special edition features. Here I'll read some of them. You can read all of them if you so choose. New 4K digital restoration with uncompressed stereo soundtrack, director David Lynch and critic Christine. Yeah, so you can read the rest of this stuff if you want to. It's director approved, so obviously David Lynch approves of this particular, you know, presentation of the movie. As I said at the beginning, this is I think what they call a digipack release. I'm not really crazy about the digipack releases. I'm not exactly sure what makes them decide on whether to release a digipack or not, if it was David Lynch's choice or whose choice, you know, who makes the choice. But, you know, here's the front of the digipack release. Here's the back of the digipack release. So basically this just slides out of the cardboard sleeve. This is the front with Anthony Hopkins' character. This is the back with the asshole guy who takes care of, or basically, you know, makes money off John Merrick character. And then opening the digipack, this is what we see when he's being paraded around at the, whatchamacallit, well, on the other side of this booklet, it's the presentation in front of the other doctors and or surgeons or whatever, and that's the front. And on the back, this is, you know, the presentation of that moment. So, having flipped through the booklet, looks like a pretty good booklet if you're into booklets. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you every single page or any pages of the booklet. Just turning the little disc to make it level there. Once you take the booklet out, this is what you'll see inside the digipack. Little bit of whatever smoke or something like that on the disc, and just like with the CD release, it's cool that Criterion, of course, for a black and white movie, went for black and white packaging and artwork for the release. So the booklet just sits inside the digipack thing. That goes like that, and that slides into there. I mean, it works fine. I guess the reason I really don't like digipacks is just because, you know, I guess over heavy use over time, which this probably won't get heavy use, I could just see them wearing out and all this and that, but whatever. I mean, I guess they're kind of cool, but I guess I just assume a regular case or whatever like that. So I guess that'll pretty much do it for my review of The Elephant Man, and still kind of recently released Blu-ray that came out from Criterion. I don't know if this is the first Blu-ray that ever came out of this movie. I would imagine it's not. But at any rate, it's probably the best Blu-ray so far to come out of The Elephant Man. And like I said, I kind of regret getting it, kind of don't. $20 is a decent price. At least I didn't, you know, I don't think I would have paid any more than $20 for it. That's the basic reason why I actually got it in the first place. But definitely, oh man, a movie that's just going to really, if you've got any kind of, I don't know, whatever, decency about you. I guess depending on your personality, I guess I shouldn't be judgmental. Depending on your personality, it has the capacity or the ability to really pull them tears out of your tear ducts, I'll tell you that. So obviously, even talking about it kind of pulled the tears out of my tear ducts. So I guess that'll pretty much do it for my review. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video. I am not an animal. I'm a human being. Yeah, it feels like I'm making making fun of it. I'm not trying. I'm not trying to make fun of it, but there's really no way to do it with the correct lip movement without looking like you're making fun of it. I am not an animal. Alright, forget it. It can't be done seriously. Shit.